Jordan Peele's Get Out had such a cultural impact that people are still talking about it almost 10 years later. But there is one major flaw that a lot of people seem to miss or just are not talking about. So let's talk about it. So I'm going to do a quick recap just to get us up to the point of where I have an issue with the movie. So the movie opens with a black guy walking down a dark suburban street where a mysterious car kind of cruises by him. And then at some point, the driver gets out and kidnaps him. Cut to Chris, who is a black young photographer, and he has a white girlfriend named Rose. They are in his apartment or someone's apartment talking about visiting or going to visit her parents for the first time. I don't believe she told them that he's black, but she basically says that her parents are pretty cool. So they drive down to her parents' house where they live in this pretty large home on a lot of land in a pretty secluded area. Chris meets Dean, Rose's dad, who is a neurosurgeon, and Missy, her mom, who is a psychiatrist. Her parents seem okay, besides a couple of off comments. They do mention Chris being a smoker and how it's bad for him. So later that night, I guess Chris can't sleep and he was wandering around the house, goes outside, and he happens across the groundskeeper and the housekeeper who are both black, but they're both being a couple of weirdos. Then he does end up running into Missy, Rose's mom. Missy ends up using a teacup or the stirring of the teacup, which assuming it's a clanking noise, where she hypnotizes Chris and sends him into the second place, where he admits to her, or she is able to get him to open up about his grief regarding the death of his mom and how he feels like he's responsible for it. The next day, Chris does realize that he does not have a craving for cigarettes anymore, but major side eyes to her mom for hypnotizing him against his will. Yeah, it's pretty creepy. I do bring up a how they're having a gathering later, so a bunch of white people show up during this gathering. They're being weird toward Chris, just very off-putting, saying stuff like touching him, saying stuff about his body. And this is where we all collectively want Chris to get the hell out of Dodge. There's this black guy who we find out is the guy who was kidnapped at the beginning. He is acting like an alien and then goes berserk when Chris's camera flash goes off. And then there's the moment everyone goes silent when Chris leaves the room. So we know that something weird is going on, and it is all centered around Chris, which this is confirmed when we see that they're having some type of auction, and Chris's picture is the one being auctioned. So we can only assume that it's Chris who is being auctioned off. There is one guy there who appears to be semi-normal. He's blind, and he is familiar with Chris's work as a photographer and kinda compliments him on his good eye. So Chris does decide that it is time for him to get out of there, and Rose is okay with it, says she'll let her parents know that they're leaving, will make up some excuse. In the midst of them trying to leave, he does discover a box of pictures that has rows with different black men and one black woman. Two of those people happen to be the groundskeeper, the black groundskeeper, and the black housekeeper. Chris does try to play it cool, but in the end, they basically kidnap him. So Chris wakes up and discovers he's tied up to a chair, and there's this retro TV set in front of him. A video starts playing that's reminiscent of those uncanny, awkward, cheesy, educational training videos from like the 80s and 90s. The video somewhat explains that he's going to be taking part in a coagula procedure. The old video and the old TV set shows you that this has been going on for some years, which is really creepy. And I believe that this showing this little educational video on this TV set just really fits well with the movie. So I did like how they did this. And then it does cut to the teacup and the stirring of the teacup, and Chris is back in the second place. So he wakes back up And now we get the guy who seemed to be normal at the party and was familiar with Chris's work, Jim. He proceeds to tell Chris that he wants to take part in the procedure to have Chris's eyesight. And this is the part where I have a problem. So, to me, this is the most crucial part of the movie because we're getting set up for this basically up until this point. There is this mystery. We're trying to find out what's going on. But what we get is an info dump. I hate info dumps. There's 3 things I hate in this world, and it's coconut shavings, centipedes, and info dumps. I hate them because there is always gonna be a more creative way, a better way for you to give information that's in this info dump. 100% of the time. There is never a reason for an info dump. I don't care. It is lazy, uncreative, and I feel like you think I'm done by force feeding me information. This info dump of how the procedure works and why Jim wants the procedure done and that Chris needs to understand how the procedure works so it can go off better, which is so convenient for us to get this info dump. Like, okay, why would he need to know how it works? Whatever. But I know that Jordan Peele is capable of doing better than an info dump because he's doing it, throughout the whole beginning of the movie up until that point. He masterfully and creatively conveys different messages through symbolism and subtext to where everything isn't being spelled out to us. For example, my favorite thing about the movie is how he shows this phenomenon of how Black people subconsciously, at least American Black people subconsciously seek each other out when we're in a room full of, like, majority white people. Like, if you know, you know. If you've ever gone to, like, a PWI and on the first day of class, you're looking around to see if there's any other Black people in the class, you know what I mean? So, he really gets this across without, like, literally having to spell it out to us. Like, he does kinda make mention of it, but it's not spelled out. So, when Chris isn't making this connection with the other Black people in the house, he is completely taken aback and totally thrown off by this, and we feel it. So, like, the part where he's in the room with Georgina, who is the housekeeper, and he says, "You get a little nervous when there's too many white people around." And she's basically like, can't relate." Then with the guy who got kidnapped, when he's at the party, he's acting like he's cosplaying as a Black person. Like, Chris is totally thrown off by this to where he tries to take a picture of him because he's like, "What is this? Like, what is going on? Like, this is I don't know. I don't understand what's going on. I'm not making this connection. So something weird is going on." So we didn't need this spelled out to us. We intuitively know what's going on, and we can make this connection from, like, our experiences in real life. So with the info dump, it's like it felt rushed. I feel like maybe he was rushing to get to the action of the movie. Just for example, what I feel like he could have done. I'm not a freaking writer. I don't write screenplays, but I'm just saying when he was sent back to the sunken place when he was in the chair and on the TV set, he got sent back to the sunken place, and then they cut to the scene with Rose talking to Rod on the phone where he's trying to figure out where Chris is. When she gets off the phone, the camera pans to the family who had been watching the exchange the whole time, which would have been what would have been cool is if the groundskeeper who is the granddad, obviously, that's on the video, the educational video, if he would've kinda came from the shadows and started talking to them about how they did a sloppy job getting Chris and Jim paid a lot of money to get the procedure and maybe just had a more natural dialogue talking about the procedure. And then cut to a scene where the dad is getting ready to do the surgery with Jim, maybe them talking about it a bit to where it's more coming across more natural and not so contrived. Like something along those lines. I just felt like the whole movie was building up to this particular point to where we finally find out what the mystery is and what's going on, and we get an info dump. It was just very uncreative to me, and I was very disappointed. What made it even more disappointing, sorry, please do not get your pitchfork out. But and I'm about to spoil another movie, so if you don't want me to spoil a random movie you don't know the name of yet, um, I'll put a timestamp so you can move forward or, click ahead or skip ahead, whatever. So, I didn't like the explanation of what was actually going on and how they were taking Chris's brain out and putting Jim's brain into the body. And I believe just keeping his brain stem to where he would just be in the sunken place. I feel like the body snatcher thing had been done before and better. In the movie, I do feel like it was the better end was the skeleton key. Like, feel however you wanna feel about that movie, but the plot twist was really good to me. I thought it was a really good plot twist. So what happened in The Skeleton Key is a young white woman who was a home health aide. She was hired to go help an elderly white couple where the husband had dementia. The husband, he has some episodes, and in one part, he actually goes out on the roof in the rain and he can't talk. He just seems like he actually does have dementia. And there's some ghostly activities kind of going on. There's also a younger lawyer who stops by the home a couple times. I'm assuming he's over their estate. Like, why else would a lawyer be coming to their house? So, what is actually going on is, say, I believe maybe 100 or so years ago, there was this black couple. I can't remember if they were enslaved or not. It's been a while since I saw the movie. But if you were black and you lived over 100 years ago, you probably just were not having a good time either way. But the black couple, they use voodoo to swap bodies with white people. When those white people get old, those white bodies get old, then they will swap bodies with another 2 other white people. In present time, the elderly husband, who was the black husband was in the elderly man's body. He had already swapped bodies with the young lawyer. So the young lawyer was in the elderly man's body. He did not have dementia. He's trying to get the heck away because that's not his body. And then the black husband's in the young white lawyer's body. So the young white woman who's the home health aide, she did not need her to come down there to take care of her husband. She needed to swap bodies with her, the black wife. So they end up doing that. So the black couples and these young white bodies, and then the two young white people are in the elderly bodies. They can't do anything about it. But I thought that that was just so good as far as like the body snatcher type of trope, I guess you can say. I don't know if it's a trope. It's not done that often, but I feel like that movie did it better. And then I guess I still also wasn't understanding why the camera flash kinda took them out of the sunken place. Like, when you hypnotize someone, like, the hypnotherapist or whoever's doing it, aren't they the ones who decide, like, what the sound is gonna be to get them out of the hypnotic state? Like, usually, like, a bell or something? Like, why would it be a camera flash? And then where we saw her hypnotize Chris, they didn't show how he got out of the sunken place. They've never shown how he got out of the sunken place. He just kinda woke up, like, when he was tied to the chair, he just kinda, like, got out of it, I guess. So there was no camera flash. So to me, it didn't make sense that that would get them out of the sunken place. And if all they have is their brainstem left, why are they themselves, like, totally and completely when they come out of the sunken place? I mean, I really did appreciate that they used more science fiction type of explanation, a science fiction type of explanation instead of like a supernatural or like mystical type thing because I feel like it did go with the tone of the movie overall to use the science fiction type of explanation. But that's just gonna make me have more questions. I feel like if you use the supernatural explanation, you can get away with anything, basically. But yeah. So in conclusion, the info dump at a critical time in the movie or the most important time in the movie with the kind of underwhelming explanation of what was going on, it made me had to remove a star for Get Out, okay? I had to take away a star for that one. But do you think I'm reaching is were you okay with the info dump? Do you think it took anything away from the movie? Like, do you agree with me? Let me know what you think. That's all I have. Bye.